again. Thank you for joining me as we continue Daniel chapter 1. I do want to take a minute to wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope you had a good time with family and friends. So last time we stopped at verse 17. Today we will read verse 18, 19, 20, and 21. Verse 18 says, "Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar." Verse 18 is telling us that the king had set a time frame for the prisoners that had been brought from Judea to Babylon. He had set a time for them to be instructed, to go to school, to learn of the ways of the Chaldeans. Remember in verse 4, it says that he wanted to teach them the language and all the learning of the Chaldeans. King Nebuchadnezzar set a time. It's almost like going to university. And he said that after this time frame, the king said, "Bring the children back so that I can test them to see how much they've learned." So the day has come, they have graduated, and now the prince of the eunuchs brings all the children before King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, the king of the greatest empire of the old world. Actually, did you know that Babylon was a world empire? When the 4 boys were brought in as captives to Babylon, the Bible is fascinating because it teaches us history. It teaches us about health. It teaches us about love, finances. I personally believe that we can find the solution to all of our problems in the Word of God. So let's continue. "And the king communed with them." In other words, and the king examined them. So it's not that the king brought them before him just to have tea and cookies. No, the king brings the captives in to examine them. And I'm sure the testing they received was something like someone taking the SAT to go to medical school. He starts asking them questions on the Babylonian language and the Chaldean culture and the Chaldean history and geography and so on. And it continues saying, "And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah." And among them who? Among them all the captives and all the Babylonians that had gone to Nebuchadnezzar's university, he tested them all, and there was found none like the 4 Hebrew boys, none like Daniel, none like Hananiah, none like Mishael, none like Azariah. Therefore, they stood before the king. And the king likes that. And the king says, "I want to keep them in my courts. They're the brightest and the most intellectual ones and the healthier ones, and they look better than the rest. Put them aside. Put them aside for my benefit." And verse 20 says, "And in all matters of wisdom and understanding." That means that they were not only intellectually better than the rest, they were also wiser than the rest. Remember, wisdom, the difference to differentiate between good and evil. Can you imagine that? Let's continue. "In all matters of wisdom and understanding, that the king inquired of them, that the king tested, that the king interviewed them. The king found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm." You know, magicians and astrologers back then, it's not the same thing as today. Back then, those were the wise men. Those were the experts in politics, in medicine, in math, in philosophy, in theology. Experts. But here, verse 20 story says, if the young men started when they were 16 and maybe 3 or 4 years later, this young men are 20, they were still 10 times better than all the experts in the realm of the kingdom of Babylon. How many times better? 10 times. Why 10 times? Well, remember verse 12? Daniel said, I beg you, try 10 days. He was so sure that his God was going to bless his obedience, and not only bless his obedience physically, but intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. God blessed the faithfulness of those 4 young Hebrew men 10 times. 10 times better than the wisest men in Babylon at a young age of around 19 to 20 years old. Now that, my friend, is powerful. If there's any young person listening to this today, I beg you, why don't you try Daniel's diet and see what it does for your physical body, for your mental capacities, for your emotional well-being. But again, it's not only good for the young people, it's also good for me and for you, the older generation. If it blessed them 10 times, it can also bless us 10 times. You see, obedience to God has a reward. And it doesn't reward us only double. It rewards us 10 times better than the rest. Now that is a God that I want to serve. And I pray that you will choose the God of Daniel. The God of Daniel that provides you with advice on what you should eat, what you should drink, what you should wear, what you should read, what you should watch, what you should think, what you should do, where you should go. Is a God that takes the whole person and fixes us from inside out 10 times better than the whole realm of the kingdom of Babylon. This blessing is awaiting me, and this blessing is awaiting you, because right now we just finished chapter 1, but you will actually discover how the blessing that God gave these 4 faithful young Hebrew boys will affect kingdoms, generations, and it actually reaches us, you and me, today. Thank you for joining me. I can hardly wait to see you next time as we read and study chapter 2 of Daniel.